Good for me to be on with you, I should say, trying to fill the big shoes of the great Kamau Bell.
Yes. Have you seen his trailers for his new show yet? Have you seen any of those?
I have.
Looks like he's got a good thing cooking over there.
I don't know how he does it though. I mean, some of the ignorance that he comes across. He's got a funny way about him though. The way he kind of turns and looks at the camera, like, really.
Right.
Man.
Yeah, like when he took me the last time on the road with him to some of them, one of his places, we went to a big mega church, and it was quite the experience. And I just was like, I couldn't take it anymore. I was like, that guy up back there on the stage, that looks like Charles Manson. That ain't Jesus, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I was just going crazy in my head. But no, he's doing some good work, and I think what he's doing with his work is bridging. He's really trying to help bridge parts of the world and the country that just are not in much communication with each other. So I give him credit for that. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, I think that's what a lot of us are trying to do, and we're lucky if we're in sports or music or art. It's easier to sort of communicate cross-culturally because all those endeavors tend to be more diversified, and you come across people from different backgrounds, and so it's easier to communicate. But I think one thing that we all have to remember is that it's tough for a lot of people to find ways to communicate, even well-meaning people who want to learn and want to try to build some bridges. It's not easy always for people to communicate. So I find humor to be the best way. That's why Kamau is such a great person for the job. But humor, sports, music, literature, it just breaks down barriers, and that's the beauty of all those endeavors.
Well, it's Kamau Bell. It's a love fest for you, brother. We miss you, man, and look forward to watching and seeing you on the CNN United States of America. Everybody, make sure, I believe their episode airs this coming week on Sunday. So make sure you tune in and get your life, get educated, and let's start building some bridges. We're continuing, Coach, to amplify the need for all of us in this pandemic to take good care of one another. This humanitarian campaign that we've all started together in now our 13th, 14th week of work. I'm proud to say that we just received another $25,000 donation from Tom's, the shoe company, and looks like they're gonna bring their one of their director of corporate life strategy. I don't know. She's the homie. She's coming on next week to say hello and talk a little bit about that. So you and I'll get a chance to meet her. And next week, I think you're going to ping and see if we can get David to come on, maybe.
Trying to get David West to come on, former Warrior, recently retired NBA player and activist, somebody who was always very much interested and involved and engaged in the community. And we always had some great discussions with Andre Iguodala, Draymond Green.
Wow.
David's just a great human being and somebody I really enjoyed coaching. So I'm gonna hit him up. I'm gonna try to see if we can get him on. He's doing a lot of good stuff with the youth through youth sports and mentoring. And David's
where's he based out of now?
He's the man.
Where's he based out of?
He is, I believe, he's in New Jersey now.
New Jersey. Okay. Good.
Yeah, he went back. He stayed in Oakland for a couple of years, and then he moved back. He's from New Jersey originally. I want to say New Jersey could be like the Virginia, Charlotte area, though. I gotta check in with him. But
yeah, no, that would be great because we have a lot of work happening in those parts, so it'd be really cool. Even to if he's got some young people, we can get some masks down there for them. I know a lot of our communities across the country are experiencing huge jumps in COVID infections and deaths. Some of you all who've been on the show with us for at least a few weeks may remember Sister Derica Purnell, who came on and talked about police abolition. She just found out she was diagnosed with COVID a few days ago. Her and another one of our young freedom fighters now, Ford. So we lift them up, and they're in our thoughts and prayers as they kind of endure the early days of this illness, and just trusting they're going to recover. So everything we're doing is really to try to make sure we can minimize the number of folks who are indeed being exposed to the virus. And just yesterday I got called from the city of Houston, and it looks like we're going to be sending about 25,000 masks down there. Wow. The mayor's office reached out, thanks to Brian Courtney Wilson, another one of our partners, and we're going to give masks to Pastor Rudy Rasmussen, their St. John. This is Beyonce's pastor. They have a huge feeding program, so we're going to send them some masks, and then we're going to put some masks in the jails and the prisons down there in Houston as they're going through their big spike. So looks like this thing is kind of taking another uptick. So our work is more important than ever.
Yeah, it really is scary, and you hear about so many cases, and I've had friends who have had it, and some of them it's no big deal one day and they're better, a couple days and they're better, and then we've got some friends who have had really serious difficulties with it. So it seems to be kind of luck of the draw type thing.
Yeah.
But,
yeah,
we all got to stay vigilant for sure.
Yep. Stay vigilant, stay home, wash your hands, wear a mask. Where's my mask at? Well, I got a mask around here. Oh, look, now you appreciate this. Bruce Lee, some people who are affiliated with Bruce Lee sent us 5,000 Bruce Lee masks. So these aren't FDA approved surgical masks, but we do give these around to some of our unhoused loved ones so they can keep using these masks regularly. So keep helping us donate to livefreeusa.org, and we're going to get these masks out. I'm super excited to bring on our first guest, the great, amazing LaTosha Brown. Come on in the room, Sister LaTosha Brown. She is the executive director and co-founder of Black Voters Matter Fund. It's a power-building Southern-based civic engagement organization that played an instrumental role in the 2017 Alabama U.S. Senate race, but it's now really organizing and raising resources all across the South and the Midwest. Let me tell you a little bit about LaTosha, just in case you haven't seen her on MSNBC. Where else you be seeing me, and where else you be? Have you been on Fox News yet? You over there and give
I have been on the local Fox. I ain't going to the big one. I ain't going.
Gotta draw the line somewhere.
You got to draw the line. I ain't going.
She's an award-winning organizer, philanthropic consultant, political strategist, and jazz singer. Before you leave, maybe you can give us a little bit of some of your impromptu take us back to the South Soul sound. But she is a longtime, wonderful, wonderful sister who's been organizing for decades. Welcome to the Mass for the People.
I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be joining both of you all. Thank you for having me, Pastor Mike.
Oh, yeah. Well, your work precedes really the kind of emphasis that many people are now putting on the South. Most people don't know that the largest number of Black people, population-wise, literally live in the South. That people are coming back home to the South. Talk a little bit about why Black Voters Matter has been and continues to be such an important vision for how we are impacting the South in our election engagement and our governance.
Well, the first thing I did right was the day I started to fight. Keep your eyes on the prize and hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize and hold on, hold on. That is why we do our work. As you know, I am a child of the deep South, the dirty South. In Alabama, you can't get more Southern than me, right? Alabama and Selma in particular, and I sing that song, and I often sing that song because I think it really captures where we are. Like ultimately, this is really around people rising up and really taking our power. That ultimately what the Constitution says, it says we the people. It doesn't say we the political parties. It doesn't say we the candidates. It says we the people. And so in order for that to be real or to be made real, we got to make sure that we're reminding people of their agency and their sense of power. And so even in that spirit, and then the other reason why I love to sing freedom songs in particular is because, you know, our people were in the deep South. They didn't have government on their side. They didn't have a lot of resources. What they always had was they had spirit and determination and each other. And so, and people of goodwill, when we link up, we win, right? And so I think that we're at that moment again on the 55th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act. We're at that moment again. I do want to make one correction. I'm not the executive director of Black Voters Matter Fund. My brother Cliff is, but we are co-founders. My title is Chief Doer. I'm just Chief Doer. But in that process, kind of the work that we're doing, I think what's really important when we're talking about the South in particular, because the majority of Black people are there, but there's also another reason I think people need to think about. When we think about the financial center in this country, we think about New York. When we think about the political center, where is that? Nobody has to ask. That's Washington, D.C. When we think about the entertainment and movies and that kind of thing, what we think about? California. Nobody has to question that, right? But when you think about where has been the core of structural racism around the seat of white power that has really been rooted in racism, that root runs straight to the South. And so that has been the power center of those that have sought to oppress others, to those that have not been able to see this America, this expansive America that's multicultural, that's multi-generational. And so we have to really think about that. If we are to root and really create a progressive country, there is no way to do that without going through the South. There's just no way to do it. And so we've got to uproot that. We have to uproot that by starting where the problem is. We have to start where the structural racism has made its home, right? It's like my granddad used to say, when you got a weed, you got to uproot it, baby, from the ground. You got to get it at the root. And so we got to get it from the root around. Right. And that's not to say racism isn't in California, isn't in all these places, because what we see is that we know they're there, but where it roots itself has been the oppressive systems in the South. And that's why we do the work that we're doing to fight voter suppression, but also to make sure that we're providing some relief for our people. So Pastor Mike, thank you for the work that you are doing. Thank you for supporting our work. And I think that when we're talking about masks and when we're talking about the need to make sure that people have what they need to be protected, we love to brag about America being the wealthiest country in the world. How do we show up? If that's the case, then why are people not having masks? If someone is in jail, that should not be a death sentence. Right? Why are we not taking care of her people? A country that doesn't take care of our people, how can you brag around that country being the greatest country on earth? It is not. You judge the greatness by how it treats her people. And so in this space, for our work, that's part of what we're doing. Part of it isn't just around elections, even though it's Black Voters Matter, because we think that people, and we named ourselves Black Voters instead of Black Votes, because there are a whole bunch of people that care about Black votes, but don't care about Black voters. And so we are centering that what it is important around is Black voters, and pushing around I'm always pushing that we have to radically reimagine America. Even if I ask us right now if I ask both of you all and everybody that's listening, just close your eyes for a second. Just close your eyes for a couple of seconds. Imagine America without racism. Open your eyes. I do this all over the country. Most of us cannot even imagine America without racism. It is that ingrained in this country. And if we can't even imagine an America without racism, how are we going to achieve it? There is nothing that exists that was not first seen as a vision. And so we've got to start envisioning what this America looks like when we're talking about that human beings are valued and the lives of human beings are valued, and that we are striving to have a country that we have eliminated racism. What does that look like? That's a vision I want to play in, Pastor Mike.
Hey, Latasha, we all witnessed the voter suppression in Georgia, and we've all been well aware of the the efforts by Stacey Abrams, and we've seen the long lines of people banging on the window after the polls have closed. What can we expect to be different in November? What is the state of Georgia doing to rectify what we just saw whenever it was 6-8 weeks ago?
I think what it is going to be what the people are doing, because part of what has happened is what we've seen is our government has failed us. That ultimately what winds up happening with voter suppression is that there's nobody held accountable. Essentially, what happened in the Georgia case with Stacey Abrams is the man that stole the election got a promotion. Right? We're seeing people every time that there's a issue around voter suppression. What winds up happening, those that steal the election, at worst, at best, they get at bad headlines, right? They don't care about that. After that wears off, they've gotten the power. So ultimately, what is going to have to happen is people are going to have to take this in our hands. That ultimately is not just going to be, we've got to have just saying that we've got to have a high vote turnout, right? But we've got to start holding people accountable. There's an effort to do recall for some when folks are in office and they don't do what they're supposed to, they need to move. Even in the Constitution says that when government no longer serves its people, it is to be replaced, repealed, or abolished. That ultimately it is for the people. For us, we've got to literally get citizens educated and organized. Organized people can change anything. Like I've seen it happen. And so we've got to get organized, so that we're doing a couple of things. One, that we're putting pressure, and those of our friends that are in positions of influence, we've got to put pressure on the Secretary of State. We've got to put pressure on those that are in Congress. We've got to put pressure on our local officials. Secondly, we've got to fund and support organizations that are doing work, voter suppression work. Organizations just like Live Free. We've got to support those organizations to make sure that they have what they need so that the people will be organized. The third is we also got to do, and some of that is happening. Like we're suing the state of Georgia right now. We're taking this fight to the streets, to the courtrooms, and to the voting booths. And
now, say a word about what does that look like when you sue the state of Georgia or sue some of these other states. What are you suing for? Is it for the machines to be fully out there, or what? To give folks a sense, a lot of people don't even know that we're still fighting in court just to have the right to vote. People don't even know that.
We're fighting in courts to have the right to vote. One of the suits, I'll just say one of our suits that we have right now, we're suing the state of Georgia around the postage. That what they did is they sent out for the absentee ballots, but you have to buy the postage yourself. Now, just think about that, y'all. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and at the time, it was a lockdown. People didn't have freedom of movement in that way. And so now, here it is, the state in a stimulus package. There were millions of dollars that was allocated, that they allocated to go to states to help during this process of absentee ballot voting. Then why is that? Why do people actually have to pay to vote? Anytime that there's a cost to you as a citizen, that is what the state's supposed to provide to us. That is in fact a poll tax. And so we're suing with ACLU, we're actually suing the state of Georgia. And because we want some relief that the Secretary of State, with the budget that we as taxpayers give them, that they take those resources and make sure that we are getting these ballots where the postage is paid.
Define what poll tax is, because a lot of folks don't even know what that language is. When I talk about poll tax and stuff, they don't even know that that's what a tactic used 50, 60, 70 years ago. That's so right. Break it on down. What's a poll tax?
So let me say the origin. I'll tell you how I found out about my grandfather, and I'm gonna break it down as simple as I can. My grandfather was born in 1901. And he actually 1905. I'm sorry, he was born in 1905. My grandfather was born in 1905, and he actually had his card of where he had a little receipt where he had paid poll tax. That one of the ways that particularly right before the Voting Rights Act that they would use to prevent people from voting is that they would charge you to be able to pay. You had to pay a tax to say that you were voting.
You literally had to pay.
You literally had to pay money so that you could vote. After you went through all the other stuff, you had to literally pay money. Now, this was directed to prevent poor people, Black folks in particular, from voting, because what you've done is you've added an additional financial burden to prevent them from voting. And so as a result, when we had the Voting Rights Act, what was eliminated is a poll tax that was found that was unconstitutional, that ultimately that people should have free and fair access to the ballot. And so once again, we're 55 years back. Even somebody can say, well, I mean, it's just a stamp. Yes, it's a stamp to some, but some of our brothers and sisters, getting a stamp is not just a stamp. Like going to, if you live in a rural community, being able to go get a stamp, paying for the stamp, making sure that you get it off. That is from the time and the cost of that. There's a cost related to that. That is a stamp and the work that it takes to get a stamp. Ultimately, when the state is paid, that one of their jobs is to make sure that we have free and fair access to the ballot. That should not be, there should be no barriers, but any financial barrier. I don't care if it's 2 cents to $10, that we should, all people should have free and fair access to the ballot. It should not be based on whether they have any resources or not.
Now, this year, we're trying to really do a big push about absentee ballot and vote by mail because of the anticipated voter suppression at the polls, voter intimidation. Can you talk a little bit about what are some of the things that people need to do in order to secure an absentee ballot or vote by mail? But then also, what are the kind of shady things people are going to try to do with people's ballots? You know, just making sure they get counted. I mean, have you heard any horror stories about that? Like one of my friends said that she did an absentee ballot request and just got it last week, and the election was 3 weeks ago.
Absolutely. We're seeing it all across the board. That's why we're saying there's a fundamental, comprehensive, it has to be a complete overhaul of the voting system in this country. We can't keep piecemealing. It's like when you've got your car, I don't know if any of y'all had a raggedy car before, but I've had one where you just keep patching it up and keep patching it up. And at some point, I remember being in college, you keep patching it up, you like, you know what, I got to just let her go and get another car. Like that's what we are with this voting piece. It's been patched up enough. We really deserve something that people have access to it. But what we've been hearing and what we've been witnessing, I'll just even offer some of the things that we saw. Let's talk about Kentucky. One of the last elections that we worked in was in Kentucky a few weeks ago. You know, in Kentucky, in Louisville, which was in Jefferson County, 50% of the Black population for the entire state live in that one county. They shut all of the voting sites down with the exception of one. So they have one site to service 612,000 people. What? I need you to know what I am saying, that I need you to understand what I am saying, that in a county that 50% of the entire population of Black people in the state live in Louisville, that they had one vote polling site, which was at the convention center, right, to service 612,000 voters. And so in that process, you know, there was a lot of, that's where we saw people were knocking at the doors to vote. You know, there was that process and people participating in that process, but we also found other things. When we first even arrived, the first voter that walked up to us handed us a letter, which we have a copy of the letter, of where he was not allowed to vote because they said he had registered Republican. And so he was not allowed to vote in the Democratic primary. And he said, I've never voted Republican. I've always voted Democrat every year. But and he received the letter, get this, at 9:30 on election day. So if there was a problem, he didn't even have time to fix the problem up, right?
Okay. Latasha, I need you to say this one more time for Steve because he dropped off. They had one in
Louisville, Kentucky. Long story short, in Louisville, Kentucky, in the county, and Jefferson and Louisville, Kentucky, there are 612,000 eligible voters. They shut down all the polling sites. They had one polling site to service 612,000 voters. And so in addition to that, like I said, we saw these other issues of where we even saw the line where there was a line was people who were trying to work the issues out. But there were also people who it was at the convention center. For some folks, even getting there was a problem, even though they did, they could take, there was a public bus, but the bus doesn't run everywhere. So it's all of those, it's almost like shaving. It's like it's like a death by 1,000 cuts. And so what we're seeing is there is a spectrum of how voter suppression takes place.
Yeah.
Now, Steve, remember when you said you go vote, it takes you, what, 10 minutes tops, like to vote, and you in and out?
Every place I've ever lived, 10 minutes tops, go in, there's multiple booths. I mean, and this is America, right? It's just, it's insane. I read that stat a few weeks ago, and I saw that. It said 600,000 people for one voting precinct. I said, that's got to be wrong. There's no way that can actually be real. And so then I kept doing research. I'm like, that's real? Like, how is that?
I'm a witness. It's happening on that level. I mean, what we're seeing is I can tell you about my personal experience. My personal experience in Georgia, when I went to vote, I stayed in line for 3 hours. My nephew, who had went a couple of days earlier, stood in line for 5 hours. We had to go. I live on the south side of town, which is primarily African-American. In the north side and North Metro Atlanta, I went there to assist a voter, which is majority white area. I go there. I get there, there's nobody outside, to the point where I thought I wasn't at a polling site. I was like, well, this can't be a polling site, right? Because it ain't no lines, ain't nobody. Yeah. Honest to God, I thought I was at the wrong place. And so I'm looking, and then even when I see white voters walking in, they strolling in. I was like, they were strolling in like they were going to Baskin Robbins. I'm glad they had that experience, but that was not my experience. Right. And then I leave there because we get a phone call to go to another place called Adams Park, which is in the city of Atlanta. I go there. By this time, it is 1 p.m. I get there and there are people in line. We've got the video. We got the receipts. There are people in line that the machines did not come online until 12 o'clock. People have been waiting there for 7 hours. There's one young woman who CNN wound up running the clip that we had taken, who was a caregiver, that she worked on the north side of town. She had a older white woman who was her client that she took to vote. She took her to vote. She said to go in and out of the polls, it took them 7 minutes. She took her client back home, came to her side of town to vote. She had been in line for 35 minutes and was being told, because she was calling herself taking her on her break, she was going to be in line an additional 2 hours. So how did she have a distinctively different experience? And we continue to see that. Then later that same day, to make matters worse, later that same day at 10 o'clock at night, my team gets a phone call around they needed help. Why? Because one of the polling sites that happened to be at a campus, a nursing home campus, because somebody thought it was good to have a polling site at a nursing home in the middle of a COVID-19. There were over 300 people, all black people in line. We stood out there until the last person voted, which was at 12:37 a.m. So it is traumatic. We're not taking this serious, how traumatic it is. And the experience is so different for black folks just exercising their right to vote.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you said the government is not doing anything, it's up to the people, right? It's up to the people to get this done, to put enough pressure to get something done. What can we do around the country? One thing I'll tell you, that the Atlanta Hawks, you probably read this. The Atlanta Hawks have opened up their stadium as a polling site in November. So the NBA is trying to figure out ways that we can support voting rights, and so we're talking about trying to do the same thing around the country, opening up. We've been talking about it in San Francisco. We haven't passed it yet, but it's something in discussion. Right? We're trying.
Did we leave Steve? That was good.
We lost Steve. but maybe say what can people do?
I'll just say.
It is important to know, like Steve Kerr and the NBA coaches, all you that are listening out there, they have committed themselves to amplifying our work collectively around the COVID response and voting. And so if you have an NBA team in your city, you may have a very interesting strategic partner to help get some of these issues surfaced. So Tasha, we have to wrap this segment up, but just maybe just anticipate what else Steve was going to say and
Okay.
what he say about how can everyday folks
Right.
get involved in this kind of fight.
So I'm gonna say 4 things. So the first thing, y'all, is we gotta fight. And I'm serious about that. That this ain't the season to sit down and complain and read and tweet out. We've got to fight. And how do you fight? The way you fight is you get organized. That we have to organize whoever's listening to you right now. There's a couple of things you can do. Everybody ain't gonna be an activist, and I know that, but you need to have a political home. So some organization that you need to be attached to. I don't care what it is, Live Free, here right here, they do a wonderful work. There are tons of other organizations from NAACP to our organization, the Urban League, whatever. But you've got to have a political home. 2, you got to write a check, whether it's $10, whether freedom ain't free, y'all.
That's right.
What you got to do is, we've got to pay for our liberation. And so what we need to do is, if it's a $10 check or $20, those organizations that are on the front line, when I think about the Advancement Project, I think of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and I think Lawyers Committee on Civil Rights. Those are organizations, Barbara Arnwine's group, that are on the front lines that are doing voter suppression work. Right now, I think the biggest threat to democracy is around voter suppression. I really do. And so we need to support those organizations that are taking the fight to the courts. I think the third thing that we have to do is we've got to educate ourselves around this in a way that we're pushing people to early vote. That instead of waiting on election day, we need to be pushing all of our folks to vote early. We need to get organized. We need to make sure that we're in communication with folks so that we are actually in monitoring. We need more folks recruited for poll workers. Your organization, you could be a poll worker. We need more people that are really in tune to what's happening so that we can watch folks, right, as they're doing this. And we've got the last thing I'll just say, we got to take some folks out. Like, at the end of the day, we can make this be whatever, but some folks got to be out. If they are not supporting democracy, we need to have them targeted. They got to go. They just got to go. And no excuses around that. We put you in office. You work for us. We don't work for you. And
tell people how to support Black Voters Matter. Where will they go to support? I hope the donate link is on all that stuff. Because I want y'all who are donating to Mass for the People to please go donate to Black Voters Matter. They are doing important work. And again, the South is critical. Florida, Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina. They're in other places. But this is one of those engines that if you spend some money in those places, Kentucky, there's some important races. They can really take that dollar, and believe me, Latasha and Brother Cliff, they'll take your dollar and make it spin like
touch it. Make it free, baby. So, and there's other organizations like Project South, and I know you got Desmond coming on, so they can talk about it. And the People's Institute out of Mississippi that's been doing work on the ground. You can check us out, blackvotersmatterfund.org. blackvotersmatterfund.org. You can follow us on social media, Black Voters MTR. You can follow me, Miss Latasha Brown. But we're always uploading our stuff. Come on, be down, y'all. Let's organize, because when we work together, we win.
The great Latasha Brown. Everybody, I want to appreciate you for all your support for our program. It was the great Latasha Brown that actually got us Tarana Burke early on. We would just get this thing off the ground. I was just asking, man, does anybody know Tarana Burke? She's like, oh, that's my homegirl. She started going on. I was like, well, hook a brother up. And she showed up here. So now that we're in voting season, we're going to have you back on at least a couple times as we get closer to the elections, because we're going to need these real-time updates on what people can do. You can give us real-time updates on how we can make sure we get the vote out. Appreciate Latasha Brown, everybody, in the comments. Go follow her, blackvotersmatterfund.org, and let's make sure we give all we can to support her.
Thank you, bro.
Thank you. Take good care of yourself. We love you so much.
Thank you. Love you too.
All right. Now we are here. We are halfway through the program. Mass for the People. Steve is jumping in and out of the stream, as you can see, having a little bit of technical difficulties, but have no fear. He's going to be back as soon as his tech stuff gets worked out. But we're going to keep it pushing. I'm sure he'll be back here by the time we get into this real good conversation with our next guest. These are heroes of mine. They're comrades. They're friends. We dreamed together for years. We've been dreaming about voting work and making sure we're restoring the rights to those with criminal convictions who've been locked out. And I'm just so blessed to have, I call them the Bonnie and Clyde of the rights restoration movement, the great and amazing Desmond and Sheena Mead, all the way from Florida. My. Go to the other shot, Navarro, because I need to see both them. I want to see both their faces. Oh, there we go. Look at that. Look at that.
Touch your neighbor, Pastor Mike.
With consent, absolutely. Your hands and all that stuff while we in this COVID crisis. It's great to see both of you. Let me just read your quick bios. Desmond Meade, formerly homeless attorney citizen who overcame obstacles to eventually become the president of the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, chair of the Floridians for a Fair Democracy, graduate of the Florida International University College of Law, and he led the FRRC Victory in 2018 to pass amendment for a grassroots citizen initiative, which has helped to restore 1.4 million Floridians with past criminal convictions the right to vote. And we now have the great Sheena Meade. My God, today. She ran for office, was that 2016?
2016.
2016 and didn't win, but she's been running ever since, right? Running in all kind of ways. Now she is the managing director, I'm gonna say this right, of the Clean Slate Initiative. Did I say that right?
Yes, sir.
All right. And she is helping to literally transform philanthropy from the inside out by bringing to the center of conversations the voices of directly impacted people and making sure that people's efforts are being fully resourced all across the country. I'm telling y'all, this has to be one of the most dynamic, if not the most dynamic duo ever to hit the activist voting rights stage. The great Desmond and Sheena Meade. Welcome to Mass for the People, everybody.
Thank you, Pastor Mike. Appreciate you. Appreciate Steve. Excited to be here. Anytime you call, we're ready.
That's true, and I be calling. Well, tell us a little bit of what's going on the ground there in Florida. Obviously, just to start with the COVID crisis, numbers are going up everywhere. I know Florida has some super high numbers around infection rates and things like that. We'll get to y'all's partnership with the Orlando Magic and the bubble and all that stuff you're doing down there, but just give us a sense of how things are going in Florida on the ground.
Yeah, well, Pastor Mike, it's scary, man. You know, but you know, there's it's always been since COVID-19 really hit, this pandemic hit. It's always been that struggle and that fine line that we have to navigate on a daily basis, right? Because part of us, part of you want to just jump fully into the humanitarian effort, all right? But then the other part is that nagging thing in the back of your head that remind you that in spite of, you know, what's going on with COVID-19, with Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, so much things that at the end of the day in 2020, this country is facing the most pivotal election that this country has ever seen. And so while there's so much going on and there's an overwhelming urge to run to the front line and strap up and fight against racism and all this evilness that we see in our world, we got to understand if everybody run to the front door, who the heck is guarding the back door, right? And so it's really having to balance the need to actually be engaged in that fight, but yet still guard the back door of democracy. Because at the end of the day, one way or another, elections are happening, and we need to make sure that we're showing up in a real way.
You guys have a lot going on down in Florida. Obviously, the NBA bubble is down there. I know the MLS had some trouble. One of the teams backed out. I think it was Dallas had to back out with a lot of COVID cases. And then obviously, Florida is always a swing state and an interesting state to follow on election night. So it must be interesting. I know there's a lot going on down there.
Well, first of all, let me say this. Thank you so much, Steve. I'm actually hoping to recruit you on. Matter of fact, I think last time we was on, you're supposed to be joining FRC as a member, if I'm not mistaken. And so I'm going to continue to hold you to that because Pastor Mike already told me you're the man of your word. I've seen you out in the streets in Oakland. But Pastor Mike, let me tell you, you know, with Masks for the People, you guys have really been helpful with us. You sent us a few thousand masks and sanitizers to Florida. I'm proud to report, man, that FRRC has delivered over 100,000 masks and sanitizers to every corner in the state of Florida.
Wow.
Sheena and I and our Neil and his wife, we were down in Key West about 2 weeks ago, delivering masks to jails, to homeless shelters. We have from Pensacola to Jacksonville to all points in between. We have been distributing masks. Ironically, about a month and a half ago, we tried to give masks to Duval County Jail. And just like Orange County Jail rejected us, Duval County Jail rejected us as well. And then last week, I get a call, right? The sheriff is now panicking because 43% of the inmates in Duval County Jail have contracted, is in isolation now because of COVID-19, right? When that could have been prevented. And so I had to rush about 6,000 masks up to Duval County last week to distribute. And so that, every now and then we're finding institutions that's not cooperating or don't have the compassion for not only the people that are incarcerated there, but even for the guards that are charged with having watch over them. But at the end of the day, we've delivered over 100,000, and man, we've circled this entire state. And y'all know Florida ain't no small state, so definitely wanted to mention that because Mass for the People allowed us to actually accomplish that goal.
You guys are doing great work. I'm dumbfounded. So you offered 6,000 masks to the prison a few weeks ago, and they said no. They turned you down. I
offered them all they needed. I didn't even stop. I didn't give them a limit. Whatever you need, we got you.
And what did they say? It was like,
no, we don't need them. We're okay. And we hear that from time to time. We're still having a difficult time really working with the governor. But at the end of the day, we get in where we fit in, and we do the best we can with what we have, and just hope that doors open up later in the future.
I just want to add, I think people have forgotten that some people are out here really trying to love thy neighbor, right? They want to know, what is your intentions? There's no intentions. We want to help people. I remember we went to Broward, and it was a little suspect when we went to go try to give masks there. And so people have to understand, this is people over politics. This is not political. We're trying to save lives out here. And so we have to go back to treating our neighbors the way we want to be treated. And I think people have lost that, and they think there's always some hidden agenda. And right now, we're just trying to make sure that the people inside the prisons, whether it's the guards or the inmates, are protected, because they still got to come home to our communities. Sure. The guards are coming home each night to their houses, and their children are in schools with our children, who actually the governor is saying that all of our children have to be back in school in a few weeks in August in Florida. So this is about us just, loving our neighbors, doing our duty, right? And just trying to help our community. And so again, it's people over politics, and they have made COVID so political that, we can't even touch the people the way we need to. And so I think when you ask, what did they say? They had no answer. They didn't know why they were saying no.
Yeah. Can you just talk a little bit about, your approach to how you are serving in this moment? Because you have been certainly along with Desmond, but even in your own right, like trying to figure out, how do we move the football forward in places where people don't put people over politics, right? Like people just decide from the beginning where they think people will fall in a fight, and then just kind of just make a decision based off of what they think. I mean, how has your work been navigating? Because you all have threaded quite a needle, and you're prioritizing directly impacted people in this whole conversation around people over politics. Just talk a little bit about that, because I think it may be instructive for us.
Yeah, so, I'm thankful for the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition and Pastor Mike knows I have to always say this. Thank you for you believing in this organization and believing in the vision of Desmond with the amendment, for planting that seed. And so Florida Rights Restoration definitely has helped grow me in this moment. You got to see me grow as an organizer, as a leader. And so the work that I'm doing now with the Clean Slate Initiative, I'm the managing director. So, I have a lot of unlikely bedfellows. It's a very bipartisan movement where, we're trying to make sure that people have a clean slate when they come home or after an arrest that usually don't lead to convictions. There's 1 in 3 Americans that have arrest records. 1 in 3. 1 out of 3. So if you even break that down to Black people and brown people, you already know how that's going to shrink. It ain't too much room you got there. But 1 out of 3 Americans have a record, and a lot of them who an arrest that haven't led to conviction. And so when I'm out there talking about this work, and like you're saying, people making decisions, again, it goes people over politics. This has impacted everybody. This is an issue that we have to talk about. We just have to change the narrative. And how do we get there? We just have to bring the community together. And so, but at the heart of it, making sure that directly impacted people who have been impacted by the system is at the center of it and is leading their own movements across this country. Sorry, Desmond, he's doing, I don't know if you want to jump in. He's doing this little thing.
No, listen, I'm smiling. First and foremost, I'm smiling because I got to be the luckiest man in this entire planet, right? To have such a beautiful, talented, and just courageous woman as my wife here. And I'm just listening to her work. And then I was smiling also because as she was talking, I was looking at our picture right on the screen. And I looked at, you got Pastor Mike, you got me, you got Sheena, and you got Coach Kerr. And maybe one of us have never been arrested before. Maybe one of us have never had a horrible encounter with law enforcement.
I got arrested one time.
All right. Now let's interview Coach about your arrest record.
Yes, Coach.
Hear about my arrest?
You know, I'm drawing him in to be a member of FRC.
So we, when I was a rookie playing in the NBA, we flew back. I can't remember where we flew back from, but we landed. I was playing for the Phoenix Suns. We landed in the airport, and our cars were parked like right on the other side of this fence. And for whatever reason, the gate was closed. Like there was some construction going on or whatever. And so they told us, you got to go down, down this way and that way. You got to walk all the way around. And I'm with 3 of my teammates, and we kind of look at each other and we're like, we can see our cars 20 feet away. So we just hopped the fence and hopped over the fence, started walking over towards our car. But it was like the no entry zone in the airport. And this was a long time ago. This was pre 9/11. This was like 88 or something. And the cops came around the corner, and it was, I think it was me and one other white guy and then 2 black guys. And so the 4 of us all got arrested.
Wow.
Right. Yeah. And so it wasn't like they treated us okay. It wasn't like uncomfortable. It was just, but I do have a record. So I am, Sheena, for the record, I'm 1 out of those 3.
Right. Well, you probably did not have to check the box for your job. So that's the thing we have to get to. There are many people in post-COVID, in this recession, that is the most vulnerable community right now across the country that cannot get relief, who cannot get assistance for their businesses, whether it's payroll protection, whether it's trying to better their education, getting Pell Grants right now. They are at the low totem pole. They're actually competing with folks that have had degrees or have been in the industry or been business owners for their job back to be a custodian or whatever regular day job that they're holding. And so, but they still have to check the box. And that's what that's the work that I'm leading on right now. And, we did some COVID responses right now across the country. People are hurting, and we want to make sure that organizations are well equipped to engage people. So what Desmond talked about and what Latasha talked about earlier is, what can we do more, right? We have some folks that need to protest. We have some folks that need to be on the front line. But what am I doing at this moment? I'm trying to make sure that we are aligning resources to the people that need it, organizations that can help change the policymakers, can change the culture, and can change the political landscape. And again, when I say political landscape, I'm not talking about red or blue. I'm talking about what is going to be people over politics in their communities.
Yeah.
Right.
So talk a little bit, because we got about 5 more minutes, but talk a little bit about Florida. So Amendment 4 has allowed Florida to bring 1.4 million potential voters into the voting process for this election. You all have been fighting in court to remove the barriers and all this stuff. You think you win a ballot initiative, and I wasn't able to be there because I got my car accident. You recall, so I was watching y'all from a distance. But it was a big old party. It was like woo. Then the next day, these people put up barriers. Just give an update on how that's going, because I think a recent victory has now removed some of those barriers. But give us a sense of what Florida is going through and how can people be supportive in making sure we get everybody out there to the polls.
Yeah. So, Pastor, the victory is already won. First of all, right? Our efforts have been inspired by God, right? Been prayed over and been led by God. Mm-hmm. And so no matter what man throws in front of us, right, we'll always overcome that, and this in this season where we've seen just a roller coaster ride with litigation. 1 minute it's all good, the next minute it's not, next minute it's all good. It's just been back and forth. And so over a month ago, when the litigants won the actual lawsuit at the state level in federal court, and the judge ruled that a lot of the costs and fees were unconstitutional because they were a poll tax. Mm-hmm. And that allowed really immediately for approximately 900,000 returning citizens to be registered immediately. Wow. But a couple of weeks after that, because the state appealed, we have a governor that, and excuse me for going off for a second, but we have a governor that insists on trying to do everything within his power to stop the expansion of democracy, to stop returning citizens from being able to vote again. And not only is he fighting this litigation tooth and nail, and we believe that this will reach the U.S. Supreme Court. That's a great possibility of that. But in addition to that, this governor who has...
Can you say why would it go all the way to the...
Why would it reach... Well, right now it's in the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals.
Wow.
And we know that even if the state were to lose there, that they're going to appeal it to the U.S. Supreme Court. And if the plaintiffs were to lose, it is an issue of national importance, and it will find its way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And so, like I said, we were having this governor that, even though he has clemency powers, and every governor has always had clemency hearings to restore people's civil rights, our current governor have not held one clemency hearing this year so far, right? And so he has granted no one the right to vote again this entire year, and he's fighting this tooth and nail. However, right now we have over 85,000 returning citizens and counting that are registered to vote. We are continuing to find creative ways to register people to vote. Pastor Mike, even when we hand out the sanitizers and masks to the homeless population and to disadvantaged populations, we got these cards right here, right? Yeah. And on these cards, you will see the QR codes, right? Yeah, and so anybody could take their phone and scan if they want to register to vote. If they have issues with fines and fees, there's a place for them to scan, and they can sign up for our fines and fees fund that would either pay their fines and fees so they can register to vote, or get them into the courts so a judge can waive their fines and fees, and then they'll be eligible to vote. And then we have another scan code. If people want to sign up to help build power, they can do so as well.
And we have real people sign them up for folks who don't have scanners or smartphones. Because he mentioned the homeless population scanning, and I was like, wait a minute, just to let you know.
Even on the sanitizer bottles, we're putting messages there that people can text to register to vote.
Let me just intervene real quick.
You keeping them honest on that technology.
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute, they ain't saying go together real quick. We got other people out there helping. But let me just say this. When we talk about COVID, we're talking about masks, we're talking about clemency. Desmond he skimmed over something. I want to go back to the governor not having clemency hearings. We're talking about in a state where we're about to hold a presidential nominating convention, where the state of Florida is open for business. We're sending children to school, but yet you're saying it is in the public health's interest for us not to hold clemency hearings. Ironically, Desmond's gonna kill me on this, but since I got the microphone and we're live and he can't stop right now, and I got Coach Steve on here and I wore your colors. I want to say Desmond was up for clemency this year. The man who led the effort to restore voting rights for 1.4 million people, the man who said that I will not cross that finish line, Sheena, when he talked to his wife a few years ago, said, I will not cross the finish line until I can cross it with 1.4 million people, who is up to say, I just want a second chance, a clean slate, another chance at life. I want to be whole. The month that he's up, you ironically canceled. And I told Desmond, this dude is a punk. I was like, even when boxers fight, they come together. They come and they come. I see them come together. They like put their little mean faces. I see politicians even call people to say, this is which way I'm going, like it or not. This man has never been face to face. You want to have this fight, have this battle, but don't have the courage to face the people who you're impacting. That's a punk. And that's not the type of leadership we need. We need public servants, not politicians that are putting politics over people. Now, right now, I'm pissed as hell as a wife, as an activist, as someone who fought and who voted for this initiative with 5 million people. Let's take the 1.4 out. 5 million people voted yes on 4. And that was some of his constituents that voted yes. And now you're playing with the livelihood of people in our most vulnerable moment in U.S. history in COVID. You want to play with people's lives. That's a punk. Yeah,
but kids can go to school. No problem.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think the most insulting fact was the fact that he welcomed the GOP convention, right, to the state of Florida, right, in the midst of this pandemic. So it is kind of.
Well, Desmond, real quick before we, because we gotta let you go, but say what your partnership with Orlando Magic is, because Coach has been part of all the NBA coaches are really leaning in because of folks like Coach Kerr, Coach Pop, Coach Brown in Philly, and you told me that you're partnering with the Orlando Magic.
Oh yes, Coach Clifford, Coach Clifford of the Orlando Magic, of course, from the president on down. Here's the deal, right? At the end of the day, the work that we're doing, we're focusing on Pookie and Ray Ray, right? And Pookie and Ray Ray ain't gonna read the Washington Post or look at Newsweek. But Pookie and Ray Ray is going to be connected to the athletes. They're going to be connected to their rap stars. One of the things that we're doing with athletes,
don't forget the women. Don't forget the women.
And Shaniqua then, right? Pookie, Ray Ray, and Shaniqua. At the end of the day,
keeping them honest. Keeping them honest. That's what you're supposed to do.
But here's the deal: that we created this tagline, right? About that with all this stuff that's going on, right, and people wanting to do something. It's time for people to get off the bench and get in the game. And that's our tagline. Get off the bench, get in the game, vote, right? And so the Orlando Magic has thrown in with us all the way to actually spread that message, to get people to understand that they can make a difference. They are partnering with us with some state attorney forums so we can educate the public about the powers of the DA and sheriffs. And then we're telling folks, listen, you've got to get in the game. You cannot continue to sit on the bench and watch the destruction of our democracy of this country. So you got to get off the bench, get in the game. And if you're a football player, go score a touchdown. But we want every NBA team to really adopt that message, in all of their cities. And it's very simple. We want to encourage our citizens, our fans, to get off the bench, go register to vote, and make sure you turn out, whether you're early voting, whether you're voting by mail or whatever.
And letting them lead by example real quick before you close, because one thing I just want to challenge, making sure that your players are leading by example, that they're registered and letting them tell their stories, because most NBA is mostly Black men, right? And they are impacted by the justice system, their families, and making sure that they're voting with their families as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm more partial to strength in numbers, but I guess get off the bench and the game is all right. But we got a little championship mantra out here that encapsulates it off from time to time.
Well, listen, as long as we can get people excited, Pastor Mike, and get while we're appreciative of you, Coach Kerr. I mean, how you're getting engaged. I think that you're right. Well, I heard you earlier, Pastor Mike, that the NBA. They're not about trying to sing national anthems. They're about getting deep into the heart of the community and connecting with grassroots organizations. And that's one thing that we're seeing from the Orlando Magic is a level of sincerity that we have never seen before from our sports team. And they're getting their hands dirty.
Without the cameras.
Yeah.
And I can tell you guys that every team in the league is committed to doing that. We've had meetings and Zoom calls over the last couple of months, and that's all we're talking about. And so the Warriors and Pastor Mike next year, we've got a partnership, and we're going to be getting our boots on the ground and in the Bay Area. And so as the NBA is committed, and we're lucky to be working with people like you. You guys are doing amazing work. So well done.
Coach Kerr, I want you to start a coach's branch of the FRRC. So find me some more coaches that jump some fences, back in their days. All right, you're going to get a coaches division of FRRC.
You got it.
Thank y'all for having us.
And Sheena Mead, thank y'all so much. We did an extended segment because y'all too good to only give you 15 minutes. And we love you so much. We'll see you. We're gonna be bringing it back multiple times because Florida's gonna be important. Sheena, your leadership, we want to keep amplifying that. Thank you for your vision and your passion. We love you both. We'll be in touch.
All right. God bless y'all.
All right. Well, Coach, we covered some voting ground today, and I'm super excited. This summer is going to be a big time for us to bring this message out even more so.
No doubt, and I'm so impressed with what people are doing out there. And I think the message has kind of been really that that I think is fairly obvious. Our government is not doing the job.
Nope.
They're dropping the ball, and so it's going to take people in communities to really push for voting rights and for precincts to open up and for voting should be easy. It shouldn't be a chore. In a democracy, voting's supposed to be easy, and we've got to get to the point where we get to that point. But it's going to happen with grassroots organizations and the people who we heard from tonight.
Yeah. Well, to close us out for this last few moments, Stephen Green is going to just give us a quick announcement about this big initiative that we're all launching together to get our folks all across the country registered to vote and request the absentee ballot. So, Stephen, come on in the room, and this is one of our most inspirational young guys. We got Stephen here. Oh, Steve is not here. Oh, man. Well, man, he was going to come on. Well, I guess I'm going to have to be the bootleg Stephen Green. So we're launching a whole freedoms efforts. You may be familiar with this, Coach, that in the 1960s, they called them freedom riders. And these were lots of young people and college students who would take off of school, and they would get on buses in the South, and they would go down, register people to vote, engage in civil disobedience to try and make sure that people's lives were being amplified, the quality of life and all the brutality that was happening there. And so we're launching our own version of Freedom Summer. And it starts, I think, on the 20th. And so maybe we'll have Stephen on next week just to give us a layout of that. But we're excited because for 6 weeks, we're going to do a virtual Freedom Summer tour. And we're going to have programming happening every night throughout the July and August months to make sure people are clear about voter registration, to make sure people are clear about requesting an absentee ballot. We've built a great tool that we call ROCKS. It's an acronym that stands for Rebuilding Our Collective Strength. And it's a one-stop shop. You can go to ROCKS and register to vote and request the absentee ballot all at the same time. And so we're hoping that, to your point, we can get this information out because a lot of people just don't know. And they don't know that things are going to be changing. People need to check their voter registration status because, unfortunately, some voters are being purged from the polls or from the rolls, and they don't even know until they show up to vote, even though they voted for. So I've heard stories of people voting in the same location for 30, 40 years, and they showed up to vote in the midterms, and they couldn't even vote because they had been dropped from the registration rolls. So it's going to be a lot of work, but this is a real cool initiative that we're going to be rolling out for the next 4 or 5 weeks, and give folks a chance every night to get some music and some conversation and some information to help people get a chance to register to vote.
I feel like a lot of good stuff is happening. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, you can be buried with bad news if you're not careful and you read too much negative stuff. But if you pay close attention, there's a lot of amazing people doing a lot of great things around the country, and the movement is strong. It's powerful. You know, and you know, one thing I wanted to bring up real quick, and I know we don't have a lot of time, but you know, the Redskins changed their name.
Yes.
And that was a really interesting process because you know the protests have been going on for probably 20 years at least about from the Native American community and others, and they always just said nah, we're fine, we're not going to change it. They finally changed it, and you know why? It wasn't because all of a sudden the owner said, oh, I'm a good guy now. It's just because the corporate partners we're not doing it, and I think that's such a great sign as it relates to the entire movement that's happening. You know, when corporate powers start to notice what's happening and actually impact change for the good, like happened with the Washington Redskins name change, that's a great sign because you know, there's a lot of impact and power that comes from business and money, and that affects politics. And so I sense that a lot of good stuff is coming.
Yeah, let's put that in the conversation ether for the next couple of weeks. I think we may be having Jamel Hill or Mike Hill, a few folks come on, and I think that'll be a really interesting conversation for y'all to just have as people who cover and participate in sports, like just the way these movements are impacting and braiding into kind of the sports world and the corporate stuff. Because to your point, like, I hope that people's consciousnesses are really changing, you know, and what does it take for it to stay moving in that direction? I think that vigilance, right? It's going to require all of us. Yeah,
and there's no question this pandemic has forced everybody to slow down and really examine life and the world. And you know, obviously there's so many factors, you know, people's jobs being at stake and you know, people being sick and unhealthy, and there's so many, you know, things going on. But it's almost like if the world had kept going, if this pandemic hadn't hit, maybe this movement wouldn't be as strong. So we almost have to look at this as a time to seize the opportunity to keep the movement going and getting stronger and stronger. And as you're doing every week, Mike, continue to bring in people who are creating change, just amazing people who are out there doing the work. It's awesome.
Well, thanks for partnering with me on this, because your presence helps to amplify them with other folks who may not even hear about it. And you know, you seem to be a good interviewer too, man. I think I forget that you were a TNT, like you know, you were actually a media person. You've done it all. You media, ball player, media person. You were president, weren't you? Like the president of team operations too?
Yeah, Phoenix Suns. Yeah. I wasn't a very good one though.
Well, you brought Shaq there. He just a little too long in the tooth, probably.
I like what I'm doing now, Mike.
I
like coaching. That's the best.
You're great at it, and this is amazing work. And appreciate you, Coach. I'm gonna let you go because you know, I want you to come back next week. But Coach Kerr, everybody, let's love and appreciate him for being our guest host for this month. We'll see you next week with some great guests. Go donate, maskforthepeople.org, livefreeusa.org. Keep the donations coming. We're going to have a big financial update next week because we are going to be making another round of PPE, likely in Arizona, in Texas, in Florida. We're sending some as well right now to Massachusetts. Boston's having a hard time. Atlanta's having a hard time. So we need your support. Keep donating. Every week we hear that the donations kind of spike during this time, which means that just having it in your face on social media and beyond, it really helps to save lives. And know that the PPE is saving a lot of lives. So thank you for your generosity. This Pastor Mike and Coach Kerr, we signing off. God bless. Peace. See you next week.